Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone here this afternoon for the Monday, March 15th Board of Commissioners meeting. And the first item on the agenda is an invocation and pledge of allegiance. And we have no one signed up. And anyone in the audience care to lead us in invocation and pledge? And if not, Mr. Miller, would you like to come on up, sir?
Bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful day, this beautiful weather, the sunshine that you've given us, and the health and longevity that you've provided for each and every one of us. Lord, please watch over us today as you always do. Please take care of us. Help us to be mindful and respectful of each other. Also, help us to ensure that we conduct ourselves as would be fitting for you. Lord, please watch over us and protect us as always. In your name we pray.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay, the next item is the approval of agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda, or can I get a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. The next item is public comment. And I have one person signed up, and please remember to, you got 3 minutes, but please speak whatever you'd like to talk about. And we will sit there intently, take notes and listen. And if you could come up and state your name and address for the record. And the first person we have is Luann Melton.
Good afternoon. My name is Luann Melton. My address is 218 Millyock Landing Drive, Millyock, North Carolina. And what I would like to talk with y'all about is the villas that y'all are planning on talking about doing in Shingle Landing. I would ask for y'all to please put a halt on the building that's around here. We do not have the infrastructure for this. I know getting out of my neighborhood, I cannot get out of my neighborhood from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
This should come under the public hearing.
I was going to let her speak for a minute and then just, okay.
Is this not?
Well, this is going to be, the item we have coming up, I was going to let you finish your train of thought there, but the item we have coming up is going to be quasi judicial, which people are going to be sworn in to provide expert testimony. And we have to make our decisions and based our voting based on evidence that is provided. Comments from the public can't be taken into consideration unless it's from an expert witness. You're more than welcome to come up during the public hearing, but if it's not, and the attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's not from an expert witness, or can you qualify what you're going to present to have?
This is just as a citizen of Millyock. So
So
when can I, and with the rest of my people?
Mr. Chairman, it would be appropriate for the citizen to make comments during that particular hearing.
So
And then the board, it would be up to the board to weigh the comments as to whether they are substantive and material evidence that would weigh upon the decision the board might make regarding that use permit.
So what I would ask you, I know you signed up for the, for public comment.
Right,
But what I'd like to do is, if you'd like to, when the public hearing comes up for the Shingle Landing piece, then I can ask if anybody wants to come up, and if you want to come up at that time. But anybody who wants to speak, I'm going to ask for them to be sworn in. So if you could
Okay.
stand up at that time and just,
So
be
later
recognized,
in
and then
this-
we'll bring you up, and then you can make your comments, and it'll be more pertinent to this item coming up, if that's okay with you.
Okay, so during the public hearing part?
We will, yes, we'll be asking for that, but when I ask for people to stand up to be sworn in for the case, then I'd ask you to stand up at that time.
Will do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't have anybody else signed up for public comment. Is there anybody out there who would like to speak at public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment and move into the commissioner's report. And today I'm going to start off to my right and recognize Commissioner Etheridge.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to again express my appreciation to all the county staff and Albemarle Regional Health Services for their efforts in the vaccination clinics that have been going on. I was talking to the gentleman the other day whose sister-in-law and brother-in-law live in Virginia Beach. They're both in their late 80s, and they have yet to receive a single first dose.
Wow.
So I think we're doing extremely well.
That's why everybody wants to come here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Etheridge. Commissioner McCord.
Mine's going to be brief. First off, I apologize on my tardiness. I had a crisis I was dealing with. Today, the 4 o'clock meeting is challenging for myself as well as Commissioner Beaumont to make. Checked on for work early and still got off late, but it's all good. Speaking of COVID vaccine clinics, tomorrow is a second round clinic from 9 to 12. At the YMCA, same as normal. If you got your first shot there, it's the same place. Thursday, second round only tomorrow, from 9 to 12. Thursday, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. is first round clinic. I talked to Chairman Payment this morning. I want to say we're 17 or 18 active cases in the county. We're doing good. Keep up the good work. I'm hoping the numbers keep going down where we can become one of those 16 states where they don't have to have the mask mandate. That's my goal. I know the CDC put out some new stuff about people being vaccinated. If you're fully vaccinated, you can do this and you can do that. And I'm fully vaccinated. I'm still having to wear a mask. So it was on when I walked in the room. But like I said, everybody keep doing good like they're doing. The numbers are going down huge in Currituck. That's awesome. The clinics run well. It's run like a Chick-fil-A, pretty much like a drive-through. It does good. Point for where you to go. Read your message boards. They'll tell you where to go. I'll be there tomorrow. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner McCord. We'll circle back around to the Vice Chairman in a minute. I'll go ahead and just make a few comments. We've had we're still having some ongoing structure fires. The fire departments are still being tasked out there. So, we had one in Little Currituck recently, too, that took down a real historic home. And unfortunately, there was people in there at that one. But just keep your first responders in your thoughts and prayers. Volunteer where you can. Help whichever you can. Support them. They're doing their best out there to keep our citizens safe. And I know they'd like, just a thank you, come by. If you can donate something, help, some spare time, I know they'd appreciate that. And also with Easter around the corner, just a reminder for everybody that there's going to be a lot of events going on, church services, and I know Currituck Kids is going to be doing something on the 27th for our children in Currituck County. They're going to be doing a drive-through event, so you don't have to get out of your cars, but it's going to be at the Morris Farm Market between 1 and 3. They're going to have the Easter Bunny there. You can get some stuff for the kids, something to do, and get out and be safe, so they're not going to have them all running. Unfortunately, won't be any Easter egg hunt, but it's something that they're trying to do for our children in Currituck County. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Commissioner White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This past week, I had the opportunity to go out with Meals on Wheels, as we mentioned last. I'm sure some of the other commissioners have done that as well. But they're getting ready to switch up and go back to going back in the homes and having more volunteers. And volunteers are always in short supply. So if you have any interest in helping out with Meals on Wheels, they're definitely looking for volunteers and could use your help. It is amazing what it does for the people that you go see to have someone come and see them. It just makes their day. They look forward to it. It is a big part of something they look forward to when we show up there. So if you can do that, it'd be much appreciated. In Corolla, we decided to move forward with the recycling program again. If you haven't seen the Facebook post, just out of overwhelming desire to keep that and pay for it. If you help put the signs out, help pick them up. We've still got some signs left in Corolla. This time of year with these March winds and April winds, they tend to go flying everywhere and end up everywhere. So if you put them out, please pick them back up now. We are going to keep the recycling. And that's it for me this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. White. Commissioner Etheridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I serve as the trustee for the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Risk Management Pool, and on Wednesday I participated in a virtual meeting of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Joint Risk Management Board of Trustees meeting. The 21 Board of Trustees members govern counties with comprehensive and affordable coverage for workmen's compensation, liability, and property damage. The pool's coverage is the preferred choice of over 70% of North Carolina counties, and it's the largest provider of risk management services to the county governments in North Carolina. During the meeting, the board took action to invest and reinvest in special purpose funding, which will support several risk control pools for the pool members. Risk control programs enhance the safety profiles of the pool members' counties. And one of the newest programs that we're getting ready to implement is to support our law enforcement safety program. To promote and encourage the wearing of seatbelts for our sheriff's department, our pool, starting on July the 1st, will include an additional death benefit of $10,000 if an officer dies in an accident and is wearing his seatbelt. We're hoping to encourage officers to buckle up before they take off. And also, I'd like to say, not to forget, Kevin, that was for you. Also, I would like to remind everybody that March is Multiple Sclerosis Month, and I do that in honor of my niece who's just been diagnosed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Etheridge. Commissioner Jarvis.
I want to kind of piggyback on what Chairman Payment said. I want to give a big thank you to our first responders, our firefighters, EMS, and deputies that responded to the Old Grandy store fire on March the 5th. The family that lived there was barely escaped with their lives. They lost everything, including their pets, and our hearts go out to them. And our firefighters battled that blaze for hours to bring it under control. And I just want to tell you a little story that illustrates how wonderful our first responders really are in this county. As the fire raged that night, a nearby resident, Miss Eileen Idlett, was fearful of the cinders and the hot debris that the fire was letting off, and she was afraid that it would consume her home as well as she watched it falling into her yard. So she called 911, and they dispatched Deputy Nathan Capps to her home for assistance. Not only did he help secure her home and ensure the safety of her home, he sat and talked with her for several hours to allay her fears, and she was truly thankful and truly felt blessed by his presence there that night. And we are blessed as a county to have such wonderful people as first responders. I know Nathan's dad was also a deputy in the county, and we are truly blessed to have them. So keep them in your prayers. Tell them thank you when you see them. So thanks for all that you do.
Thank you, Commissioner Jarvis. I'm going to circle back around to our Vice Chair, Commissioner Beaumont.
After he says, I just want to add one thing, if you don't mind.
Mr. Chairman, I want to apologize for being late, but as we discussed, this meeting time is extremely difficult for me to be able to make consistently, and today was a light day, so Lord willing, I'll still be able to get some things switched around and free that back up. To tag team with what Commissioner White said, ironically, one of those signs is talking about recycling, and please don't, trash our oceans. And here we are in an oceanfront community with plastic signs on that are no longer necessary. Other than that, I don't really have anything else other than getting situated.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Vice Chair. And Chairman McCord, you had another
I
comment?
got promoted to chairman. I was
Yeah.
kidding. Commissioner. I just wanted to add on one thing Selena said too, and I'm not sure which caps because family, the son works Corolla, the dad works the mainland. I just want to say I think both of them actually went
Okay.
because it was towards the end of the shift. But like I said, those guys in the fire department, I did want to say they did a good job in the community too. I got a lot of phone calls, which they thought it was me, but it was actually one of the other supervisors had started some stuff for the kids for fundraising from people, and I've just put them in contact with Sergeant Davidson because he had done some stuff as well. And he lives in Grandy and works in Corolla, but. Like I said, I mean, the people that, not only the deputies, and I do wear my seatbelt too, Miss Kitty, because that thing beeps. If it's not on in my car, it beeps, and it'll give you a headache. So I'm glad I have that. But the fire department guys, they did a phenomenal job. I mean, like you said, and that family, they're very lucky. There was some injuries and stuff, so they're very fortunate that it wasn't worse. So, like I said, kudos to those guys in dispatch too. They took the phone calls when something major, catastrophic happens like that. The phone just lights up. So, but thank you all for that.
Thank you, Commissioner McCord. And now we go into the county manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got a couple things. Household Hazardous Waste Day is this Saturday. So if you've got things that you can't normally dispose of, it's going to be from 9 to 3 on Saturday in the mainland at the Judicial Center. It's going to be from 9 to 12 in Corolla at the Southern Outer Banks Water Plant. You'll need to either have your solid waste decal or proof of property ownership or proof of residency with you. We will be distributing the decals if you need one at that time. One thing that folks bring there a lot that we actually don't take there is latex paint. If you just put some kitty litter or sand in the paint, it'll dry it up, and we don't have to pay a whole bunch of money to get rid of it. So I'd encourage the public to put that in there. Then you can take that to any of the convenient sites around the county. The Senior Center is going to begin offering on-site services to seniors Monday, the 22nd. So if you want to reserve a spot for any of the programming they have available, you just call in the day before. So you could call in on Friday, reserve a spot. We're excited to have that back open. We're going to do our best to maintain all of the guidelines that we're required to, but I know that the staff and the seniors are going to be excited to see each other once again. If you want to register for an appointment, the number is 252-232-3505. Speaking of volunteer fire departments and house fires, it is time change. It's time to change your batteries on your smoke detectors. So for folks out there, this is the time to do that. I wanted to highlight a program that was put together in Knott's Island by the fire department out there in response to the tragedy that they had. They felt like some awareness for smoke detectors was warranted, so they actually put out what's called a smoke detector blitz, put out a lot of publicity, and ended up going to 28 individual homes in order to check smoke detectors and install smoke detectors. That is a service that's available from any of our volunteer fire departments anytime. So if you need a smoke detector installed or help with that, please reach out to your local volunteer fire department, and they'll be happy to help you. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Duckleather. The next item is administrative reports, and I believe the Currituck County Auditor's report from Carr, Riggs, and Ingram is here to present.
Good afternoon. I'm Madonna Stafford with Carr, Riggs & Ingram. I'm a partner in the New Bern office, and I'm in charge of the county's audit. This was the 13th year I've worked on the county's audit, and I'm pleased to say things ran very smoothly again this year, despite all the pandemic, people working remote, government shutdowns, everything that went into it. It was a very different year, but still very successful. I'd like to just take a couple minutes and kind of briefly go over the audit report and give you our results for the year. First, and certainly most important, we were engaged to perform a financial audit and give an opinion on those financial statements. And we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements this year, which basically means a clean opinion with no material modifications noted. Also engaged to provide a compliance audit over all major federal and state programs for the year. You guys had one major federal program, which was the Assistance for Firefighters grant, and there were no major state programs for the year since total state awards was less than $500,000 for the year. So on your major federal program, we were able to express an opinion that you had complied in all material aspects with the grant requirements. And we found no question caused or any sort of material noncompliance that we were required to report or investigate any further. Next, I'd like to just take a minute and point out a few of your financial highlights for the year. The net position for the total government and all county funds, both governmental and business, increased approximately $10.5 million for the year. And your net position ended the year at $211,082,117. The governmental activities accounted for $5.2 million of the increase, and your business type activities, which is your solid waste and all water and sewer activities, was the remaining $5.3 million. I'd also like to look at the general fund balance for a minute. That increased $766,000 for the year. The general fund is very important as that's one of your key operating funds, and the LGC monitors that very closely from year to year. They pay particular attention to your ratio of unassigned fund balance to your total expenditures for the year. So for the county, your unassigned ending fund balance was $11,064,887, and that represented 21.39% of your general fund expenditures for the year. The LGC advises that this ratio should be at least 8%. So as you can see, the county is in great shape with that and has lots of reserves and continues to build that from year to year. Your business type activity net position overall increased to $5.3 million. This increase was due entirely to your water and sewer activities. From increase in revenues, which was driven from an increase in consumption for water, your total billings on the water increased about $700,000 for the year. Solid Waste Fund had a loss for the year of $465,000 approximately, due mainly to increases in the disposal and collection expenses for the county. From a budgetary standpoint, there were no violations of the state statutes, and we found no over expenditures that were required to be reported. So the county's doing a great job monitoring the budget and making sure that amendments are adopted timely. Your tax collection rate for the year remained strong at 98.43%. This is down just a little bit from 2019, where it was 99.09%. So that's just a little over a 0.5% decrease, but still in great shape. There was only one finding to report this year, and that was due to the implementation of GASB 84, which relates to your fiduciary fund classifications. Under these new guidelines, the Post-Employment Benefit Trust no longer meets the requirements to be presented as a fiduciary fund. So in effect, this money was moved over to the general fund, so your investments and fund balance both in the general fund increased, and the restatement totaled $1,715,346. Due to this material dollar amount, we had to classify this as a material weakness just because of the a dollar amount involved, but it has been corrected. Other than that, there were no internal control deficiencies noted or any other concerns to bring to your attention. I would like to just say thanks again to Sandra Hill and her entire finance department staff. They were very good and very responsive to get us information, answer questions, and just continue moving the audit forward. We were able to submit the audit timely with the LGC's extended deadline, so we did not need an amended contract this year, and that's about it. I mean, so if you guys have any questions, comments, I'll be glad to address those.
Could you tell us again what the fund balance is?
Right. You want the dollar amount?
Please.
The unassigned, let me get back over to that page. The unassigned amount is $11,064,887.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions from the board? If not-
When she said that unassigned part, what's the, and I mean, don't we have, I mean, I know we have like another,
Restricted funds.
yeah. I mean, I don't need to know it, but that's just there's two. We're good.
You're good?
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Stafford, we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is public hearings, and we have two quasi-judicial. The first one is PB 20-24, Shingle Landing Villas, request for a preliminary plat use permit for multifamily subdivisions, townhouse development located on Moyac Landing Drive, tax map 9, parcel 29T, Moyac Township. And anyone who wishes to speak on this matter or provide any testimony, please, would you stand up and we'll just do it right where you're at and raise your, we'll just do it right there. Just raise your right hand. Yeah, I'm going to just do affirm. Do you affirm that the evidence provided tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, thank you. Okay, you may be seated. Okay, with that, I believe we have Lori LaCicero going to be presenting for the county on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before you this afternoon is a use permit for preliminary plat to subdivide a townhouse development. This is your context map. It is located in Shingle Landing subdivision in the Moyac Township. Here's a close-up. It is located between the Currituck House and Currituck Highway. The current zoning is conditional MXR. You can see the surrounding area. You had GB to the south, conditional single family to the north, GB to the east and west, general business. It is full service in the 2006 land use plan, and it is also full service in the Moyac small area plan. So this property does have a little bit of a history. It is 4.1 acres. And in 2017, it did receive a conditional MXR zoning designation. Our UDO does require, for any multifamily, our UDO does require a conditional zoning, conditional MXR. That was in 2017, and it was for 16 units, townhome units, 1 accessory dwelling unit, and also on-site storage units. In 2018, that was amended, that conditional MXR was amended to incorporate those storage units as garages, or potentially it went from, eliminated the garages, the storage units there, and incorporated garages into each individual townhome. So that was the conditional MXR. That was to get the zoning in place to get the use and the density on that property. And now they're coming back and they're wanting to subdivide that property. That requires going through the use permit. The zoning established the use and the density, and now we're coming back to subdivide the property. This project was also delayed because of issues with the Moyac Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. So, and let me stress that this project could be built, the zoning's in place for this to come through as a major site plan, but they're coming back before you now to be able to subdivide and create their own individual lots for these townhomes. So, because they are doing this, coming back before you for the use permit, this does require, that does bump up against our adequate public facilities ordinance. This would be subject, because it is multifamily, it would be subject to our community forms, compatibility, and design standards to ensure the well-designed neighborhood. So it will be on public water, and county sewer. They are going to be connecting onto Moyock Landing Drive. The project will be would have a state low-density stormwater permit, and they will have to meet our commercial standards of the five-year storm and released at a 2-year rate. They will be required to landscaping, and there will be 44 exterior parking spaces in addition to the garage spaces. So, once again, the zoning's in place. This is now coming through for a use permit to be able to subdivide the property. And the use permit standards that we are all familiar with now, the applicant would have to, the board would have to make these findings of fact, that the use will not endanger the public health or safety. The use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, and it will be in harmony with the area in which it is located. The use will be in conformity with the land use plan and other officially adopted plans, and the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. So, for these, the applicant is usually responsible for 2 of those findings, and staff will give input to the board for 2 of those other findings. So as far as the use will not endanger the public health or safety, once again, the zoning is in place. They're coming back now to be able to subdivide the property. These are the preliminary applicant findings, that stormwater has been in design in accordance with the zoning approval of CMXR and has been approved by North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. The wastewater collection system has also been approved, and they will be treated by the Moyock Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. The North Carolina DEQ has approved their sedimentation and erosion control plan, and DOT has approved their connection to Moyock Landing Drive. For the use will not injure the value of adjoining lands and be in harmony with the area in which it is located. You see, these are the preliminary applicant findings. The land to the north is single-family residential, but has significant tree buffer to the site. Land to the east is the Currituck house, it's a living facility. Land to the west is commercial, and to the south is residential. The board determined the use is appropriate for the land by virtue of the conditional zoning approval, and it was determined development creates a new residential use type at an appropriate density for this area where the county water and sewer are available. However, for the preliminary staff findings, that the proposed use is not in keeping with the goals and policies of the 2006 land use plan. Once again, this is a use permit, and we're butting up against the adequate public facilities ordinance. Then LUP policy SF4 and PP2, where we're talking about adequate public facilities, and also the Moyock Small Area Plan community values. And this will exceed, right now, the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. This is a chart we're all very familiar with right here. Current capacity for the Moyock Elementary School. This will be going to the Moyock Elementary School. We're at 109%, and for the 2000, once the class sizes are legislatively have to change, they would be at 115%. And committed capacity is 126% for the northern mainland schools. However, once again, the zoning was put in place in 2018 before we encountered these issues with the schools. So in that, this is the information that staff received from the county manager that he expects to give notice to proceed with the school expansion June 1st. And that should increase the capacity for Moyock Elementary to 750 students. And it should be completed by the start of the 23-24 school year. So because of this, the technical review committee recommends denial of the use permit because we are not, in our ordinance we have language that says the use permit should only be approved if we have adequate facilities are in place or programmed to be in place within 2 years. So we are not at that point, so the TRC recommends denial of this use permit. However, although that we are recommending denial, should the board approve this request, these are the following conditions of approval that are recommended. Not submitting for preliminary plat use permit approval until adequate public facilities are in place, program to be in place within 2 years. Developing strictly in accordance with the approved conditional MXR conditions set by the BOC in February 2018. And these are listed here. And development shall be done completely in accordance with the conceptual development plan submitted to and approved by the board. Development consists of 16-unit townhome development with attached garages and 1 detached garage storage unit and 1 detached accessory dwelling unit. And the architectural renderings of the townhome should be incorporated into the approval, and the units constructed in accordance with the expanded description given to the board at the February 19, 2018 meeting. And the county will take over the maintenance and operation of the lift station upon completion and certification. So, I'm open to welcome any questions the board may have about this project.
I've got a question. Back in 2018, when we voted on this as the Board of Commissioners back then, did we not approve that project to move forward at that time, before this came before us?
You
Approved with the town,
approved with the townhomes, you did. So the zoning's in place.
all right, and the townhome was approved,
The townhome was approved. All these are part of your,
correct?
yeah, packet page 44 and 45 is the order for the zoning, and then you see following those are the renderings that the board approved with the conditional.
So if this wasn't, if this request change wasn't before us, he could move forward with what the board approved back in 2018?
Correct. He can move forward with building the townhomes as a major site plan.
Okay.
The reason he's back before you now is he wants to create lots and subdivide the property into each individual townhome sits on its own thing. He can move forward with the project to be built as a major site plan.
Right, so if this got denied, he could still build because it was approved back in 2018?
Correct.
That's what, okay.
Can I ask then, if it was approved in 2018 and it could go forward, are the numbers for the potential students already in the committed capacity?
We do list them in, for the committed capacity. Yeah, for the committed capacity, those are listed in here. We've got those would be generating 4 elementary school students, 1 middle school student, and 2 high school students.
So in that committed capacity, those numbers are already in there?
So those numbers are already in here.
And so really what we're talking about tonight, the project is substantially the same, just adding lines to a map. That's really
Correct.
why we're here.
Just putting
Correct.
lines on a map.
Just we're putting
Okay.
property lines on a map, and we're creating those individual lots on each individual townhome.
But the purpose of doing that, making the lines, would that not take all the responsibility off of the person who owns the land now and put it on the individual lots?
It certainly has an aspect to that, and I think and this would be a question for the applicant, but I think the intent is to still have a homeowners association or property owners association to manage the open space and anything that's not on an individual
I
parcel.
had the same question, and I was going to ask him how he plans on, who's going to maintain the common area, the common elements of the property going forward if they're sold off, right? And I'm sure he'll have some sort of plan in place for that, so.
And that would be a question for the applicant.
Could we put the county manager statement that you kind of went through up on the screen, please?
You got it?
So my first question is, as a quasi-judicial session, is the intent that the county manager will come up and make this statement as well? Because right now what it appears is county staff is providing testimony on behalf of you, the county manager.
I'm happy to speak to it as far as the capacity goes. Once again, as the email that's in the record shows, we feel like we'll have a expansion project for the classrooms completed by August of 2023.
And I understand that, but all I'm referring to is she's making a comment or making a statement attesting to what you have said, and I would just like that affirmed from a quasi-judicial position as entered into the evidence.
To the best of my ability, I believe that we will have an expansion project with classrooms completed by August of 2023, which should take the capacity for Moyock Elementary School up to 750 students.
Thank you.
June the 1st is when we expect to give the notice to proceed with design work, and because it's a design build contract, June 1st then begins. They'll start the design work. They'll start construction as design flows into that. But I mean, like I said, it could be earlier than that. But I have a comfort level at August of 2023. So.
But according to our ordinance, we should look at 2 years out, and so if you haven't given that, how can we proceed to approve it?
This is a very nuanced case, and I'm not trying to. I mean, the planning staff has given their recommendation. I think it's nuanced because the fact that those kids could be generated whether or not this application is approved. So whether or not you all approve or deny this tonight or this afternoon, those 4 elementary kids could be created.
Without our permission at this point.
Yeah.
Well, with your permission that was given in 2018.
Right.
Yeah, we approved in 2018, which is accounted for.
So there is some nuance to it there. But yeah, as far as when it's programmed, my hope is that it's programmed, belief is that it's programmed by August of 2023. When you're talking about schools, I don't know that June to August schools aren't in session from June to August, so I don't know that time frame, it's kind of into semantics then. But I can just speak to what my comfort level is with the construction project.
And how many mobile classrooms have we? 3 or 4? Do we do up
there? There's 3, and if Dr. Lute says this is wrong, he can correct me. I believe there's 3 out there now, and looking to add 2 more. 2 more units.
2 plus 1.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Well, the way the UDO reads is that the program is in place within 2 years. Exactly what does that mean? Does it have to be finished, or the program under?
I think it starts the clock, right? When you get to the 2-year mark, you've started the clock and you can proceed. Is that correct? Like,
that would be correct. I mean, it might rise to the level of what is the programming? Is it actually a construction contract that has a substantial completion date that you more firmly have an idea, or is it something that's kind of speculative at this point when you don't even have a construction contract that is prepared and ready to be executed?
I was always under the guidance, or from a practical application of that UDO, that it's a plan that's in place moving forward. That doesn't mean the plan has been completed. It means that the county has a plan moving forward to get it accomplished. And to what Ike just suggested, it doesn't mean, it means there's details with it. There are dates associated with it. It doesn't mean that it got completed.
That was the original intent.
Correct.
Am I understanding you correctly? I know that the students have already been added in.
Correct.
But now that we're changing things, it has to start the process over again, and therefore there isn't adequate public facility. Is that correct?
I know, like the county manager said, it is very nuanced. At that rezoning level, they could have moved forward and built the project. Once they got the zoning in place, they could have moved forward as a major site plan. And so, yes, we have factored in those students into the committed capacity. Now he's got to come forward as for the use permit part. So the zoning gives you the use and the density, the intensity, the use, and the density of the project. That does not innately create lots and create the subdivision. Now we have to go through the use permit process for that preliminary plat in order to actually subdivide, to create new lots on the property. So when they did that, we have to come back through the process, and instead of a legislative decision, which rezoning is, and now is before you as a quasi-judicial decision, so that for the use permit, and then it has to meet those 4 findings, and we err on the side of caution, staff does, that it's not programmed, those adequate public facilities aren't programmed to be in place, or they're not in place right now, and they're not programmed to be in place in 2 years, so we take a very conservative view on that. So, I don't know if I answered your question, or if I...
So we pulled them out, and we can't put them back in because we have to start the process all over, and therefore what we're trying to do is against our own UDO.
Wait, are those numbers that you presented up there only they already have the students built into them
Yeah.
from 2018, correct? Yeah, you're not pulling them out.
So this is the issue where, I mean, we're not pulling them out. I mean, they are in the committed capacity.
Yeah, they were in that committed capacity in 2018. So we're not adding another 4 because they're already
We're not
showing
adding
up.
another 4.
Yeah, they're
But
already in
because
there.
we are now actually over capacity, actual capacity, not talking about committed capacities,
Right.
those are over capacity there. Those kids aren't here because the project hasn't been built, so it's still over capacity.
Correct, but they were added to those numbers back in
Committed capacity.
2018.
Right, they were added to
Yeah,
the
so
committed
we're not
capacity.
we're not adding another 4 to it. Those numbers right there only reflect what was approved in 2018.
Right.
Okay.
This shows how inflexible the UDO is, because all we're doing, the subdivision's in place. He's just coming in to draw lot lines under each unit now.
The project's in place, and once again, the use as a multifamily is in place, and the density's in place. The subdivision's not in place, which is why we're having to come back through that process.
Well, theoretically, the subdivision's not in place, but it's in place if he wanted to build it on a major site plan. There's 16 units that's been approved. All we're doing is just putting lines on a map.
Correct. And I tried to make that point that the zoning's in place, and this could move forward. If, I'm not saying whatever you do tonight is your decision, but if it's approved or not approved, he could still move
He
forward.
stiuld move, and those
He
kids
could
were
still
already
move
committed
forward, and
still,
those-
so.
Right.
Those kids are already
He's going to
there.
have to school if he wants to go forward under the old
So,
current.
like I said, it's very new. Like the county manager said, it's very nuanced with this. The zoning's in place, the kids are already accounted for in the committed capacity, and he can move forward even without the ability to subdivide.
You're just going through this process because you have to based on yes, understood.
And if we weren't at this point where we are with schools, this could all be done administratively. And 20 lots or less could be handled administratively at the staff level. But because we are where we are with schools, this kicks it into having to come before the board.
And we may need a quick work session to have the discussion about adequate public facilities. But the intent of that at the time was to force action on the board to make sure moving forward that things would be done to take care of the excess of kids or exceeding the number of kids. Because as Dan Scanlon used to say as well, we don't build a school because we got one extra child. We do not build a school for one kid. And by definition, that's the adequate public facilities. That would suggest that once we get to school capacity plus 1, then we're done. And that was never the intent of the adequate public facilities. And I find it interesting that that is the basis of basically staff's recommendation, is hinging on that, which is not an absolute. It is a plan moving forward. That's been the intent all along. And we need to, sooner than later, we need to have this discussion so that staff understands this going forward.
But with the staff, when there's one over, you're starting to look with the building of the school for the 2 years out.
Well, at 85%, when any school,
Planning tool.
when we're at 85%, that's why we have this caveat that we're at 85%. Even type 1 preliminary plats would come forward for a use permit from the board so that we can start having these conversations. And type 1 is anything 20 lots or less. So, that's another trigger that this is where we are.
Do we have any other questions from this at this time from the Board of Commissioners? If not, before I ask the the applicant to come forward, I will give him the opportunity to ask any questions to the staff before you come up and do your case. Do you have any questions regarding anything that she had mentioned up to this point? If not, then I'll bring you forward and have Ms. Lisser sit down. I'm just giving you opportunity to have any kind of questions. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you, Ms. Lisser. So now I'll ask the applicant to please come forward, please.
Mr. Chairman, as it appears this corporate applicant is not represented by an attorney, I need to make a statement as required by the North Carolina State Bar. Authorized Practice Advisory Opinion 2006-1, while it recognizes that a corporate officer or employee may testify on factual matters being presented by a corporate party, the presentation of other evidence, including the examination or cross-examination of witnesses, making legal arguments, and advocacy for results on behalf of others or the corporation before the quasi-judicial body, is the practice of law and may be performed only by a licensed attorney.
Let me just respond to that, Mr. McCready. Shingle Landing Villas LLC is a single-member LLC.
It is a corporation under North Carolina law which may not be represented by a non-lawyer in a quasi-judicial proceeding.
All I'm saying is that I'm not representing any other parties other than myself.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm required to tell the board what the law is, and you may continue to proceed with the hearing, but I'm just required to make that statement by the State Bar.
Understand. Thank you.
And do you understand?
Yes, sir, I do. And like I said, it's a single member, so really not representing other parties.
As long as you understand the ramifications and all that, okay, then if you state your name, please, and address, and again for the record.
My name is Sam Miller. I represent Shingle Landing Villas LLC, which is the applicant. As you heard from Ms. LaCicero, as well as the county manager, and we've talked about this numerous times as well together, this has been somewhat of a lengthy process of what we've gone through, and we're going through trying to get things together due to some other factors that were outside of the scope of the control of the project. That being said, we did ask for townhomes, which y'all did approve back in 2017, and then we amended it to have more of the house feel by moving the garages into the units in 18, and then dealt with the Moyock wastewater system issues that we went through and otherwise, and brings us here today. The long and short of it really is, yes, we're really just asking for permission to draw lines on the map, and that's the simplest way I can explain it. It doesn't change the look, feel, shape, touch, aesthetics, number of units, number of people that live in them, whether they're rented, owned, or otherwise. But what it does do is it creates a bit more longevity, because as we all know, our time is limited here on this earth. And if we produce something in the current form that it's in, let me back up for a second. When we first came forward with this as townhomes, that's what we'd asked for, and that's what we'd gotten approval and permission for, just as it's written in the ordinance, the UDO, and there's a definition for a townhome. And it has its own property lines, it has its own lot lines, they fall on the walls. The current, because we haven't been able to get through that process due to some of the other capacity issues with the wastewater system and performance issues, now we're finally trying to get all this stuff caught up. And the long and short of it is, if we leave it the way it is, yes, we can build it, we can do all those things, but it will probably create more issues for the community than putting the lines on the map. Putting the lines on the map allows it to be what's classified legally as a townhome. If we don't put the lines on the map, then it becomes a condominium complex. A condominium complex creates much more issues, and I prepared a document. We are in the age of COVID-19. I have a mortgage lender who I inquired to come forward and actually speak on this as expert testimony. He can't speak on it, but he did provide a letter as to that, just because he has a COVID condition in his household. So I'd like to present that.
Will you present that? I'm not sure if we can.
A letter constitutes hearsay evidence that the board may not consider in making a finding of fact critical to the decision.
Even if it's written from that.
That's correct. That constitutes hearsay testimony because
Versus him not being
they may not be,
presented.
they may not be examined or cross-examined.
So unfortunately, you can't present that, so.
All right, well, we'll throw that away. You have a trash can? I'm sorry?
Well, I mean, that would
That,
still
that
be considered
would
hearsay.
constitute, that would still constitute hearsay.
We just can't use it to make a
Correct.
determination for
Well,
our decision.
My understanding of the issue, what we're asking to do is draw those lines on the map. If we don't, what happens is we will have a condominium complex. And in a condominium complex, we have different ownership criteria, which are very easy to see if you do any kind of amount of research on that stuff. In a condominium, the ability to obtain a loan is much more stringent. The delinquency in the HOA is a main factor. In most HOAs, you end up running a 10, 20% delinquency in dues, meaning people are late in their payments, things like that. And they treat a lot of that, and I know this from dealing with whether it be Laurel Woods, Brady Landy, Shingle Landing Villa, or Sound Woods, Sunrise on the Sound. I mean, you pick the subdivision, it doesn't matter. There's always someone who's late, there's always someone who doesn't pay on time. That delinquency is measured in a condominium complex. If that delinquency falls below 15%, no mortgage company in the country will approve a loan. Also, no more than one entity can actually own 10% or more of a project. So if you have, say you owned 2 of the condo units, at that point, you can't have resales for individuals. So if we want to have longevity with this, we really have the best interest in mind in the community to put it as townhomes, not condominiums. Otherwise, it's just an industrial commercial project with one owner and pretty much all in one box, because that's how we had planned to build it. We had planned to build it and rent it. So putting the lines on the map doesn't change the number of kids in the schools. It doesn't change any of those pieces. All that stuff's already in all the numbers. All this does is put it on the map so that this product can actually be sold someday in the future as individual pieces. Otherwise, if we don't do that, it won't be able to be sold as individual pieces. It'll be one slug, and when we sell it, we'll sell it as 16 units with the accessory dwelling unit, and we'll sell it to one individual or one corporation at that point at some time. That doesn't create the best interest for the county. It also doesn't create the best valuation. When you look at how you value properties, whether you value it based on an income approach or you base it on a cost approach, look at it this way. If you sell a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house with a garage in Moyock, it's north of $300,000. If you sell it as one big project, you only sell it based upon the income at a cap rate, which is the same way cottages and things sell on the ocean front. Much more value in the property, much higher taxes if you value it as a townhome than if you value it as a condominium complex. So the short of it is it gives something that we can actually sell at some point in time as individual units, because we won't be able to meet the criteria for people to hit FHA, VA, or other loans as a result of it. It also creates more value in it, in those pieces, and it's what we originally asked for. And the only reason we're asking for it now is because this is how long it's taken to get through everything to get to this point. That's why the kids are in the numbers. That's why we're doing this now.
So Mr. Miller, Commissioner Etheridge brought this up, and I had the same concerns. Who's going to take care of the common elements there? So you're just buying the structure, but you're not buying the outside siding, are you, or the yards, or the streets, the road? There will be some sort of organization to take care of that. How do you?
Yeah, we do. We have the same organization in those pieces. You would have the same kind of organization if you stayed as a condo, or if you subdivided it and made it townhomes, you have the same organization. You have a homeowners association. One's called a condo owners association, one's called a homeowners association. They function essentially the same way. Just the condo association, just legally, is more complicated and more convoluted.
All right. With those. Okay.
And any other questions from the board? Does that complete your presentation?
Basically, yes, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it's really, we're asking for the lines on the map, and we're asking to be able to construct what we had originally requested, which is townhomes.
Okay, any questions from Mr. Bissell this time? Thank you, Mr.
Did you want to present
Mr.
anything?
Miller, I mean.
Mark has a
Excuse
couple
me,
things he'd
Mark
like to.
Bissell, you want to add some stuff? Apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I wanted to go through the use permit criteria.
Could you just state your name again?
Mark Bissell,
Okay, thank you.
3512 North Currituck Highway. I just wanted to kind of go through the use permit criteria, but before I do that, I just wanted to review the zoning conditions that were approved. There was a mention about inconsistency with the Moyoc Small Area Plan, and I wanted to address that specifically. But the board found in 2017 and reaffirmed in 2018 that this project is consistent with the 2006 land use plan because county water and sewer are available to the site, and the use will help to grow those systems, that it's at a density that is appropriate for the location, adequate public facilities are available to service the project, that it's located in the fastest growing area of the county that continues to evolve as a full-service community, and is consistent with the Moyoc Small Area Plan because there'll be a sidewalk connection to the assisted living facility, park, and subdivision to the east, that infrastructure and service needs of the community are met, that impervious lot coverage is reduced and stormwater is properly managed, and that it is compatible with the rural atmosphere, transitional areas, in a small town Main Street feel, and that it's reasonable and in the public interest because it creates a new residential use type at an appropriate density for the area where county water and sewer are available, and that it provides a moderate cost housing opportunity for county residents within a well-designed neighborhood. So nothing has really changed other than the lines of the map. And then the use will not endanger the public health or safety because stormwater management has been designed in accordance with that conditional zoning approval and has been approved by the state. And stormwater retention ponds will be constructed to manage and retain stormwater and slow release into adjacent stormwater outlets. That a wastewater system and lift station has been designed and approved by DEQ, which will be pumped to the Moyoc Regional Wastewater System for treatment. That the project has been designed and has been approved by Division of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources for sedimentation and erosion control, and will minimize erosion and siltation on site. DOT has reviewed and approved the connection to Moyoc Landing Drive. The use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands. It will be in harmony with the area in which it is located, as the board previously determined. And I won't repeat those statements again. The use will be in conformity with the land use plan. Again, the same criteria are presented that the board ruled on and found in conformity previously. And again, is consistent with the Moyoc Small Area Plan for the same reasons. That the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities, including but not limited to schools, fire and rescue, law enforcement, and other county facilities. The Board of Commissioners determined in 2018 that the development is reasonable and in the public interest, and that adequate public facilities were available to service the project. Construction of the project was delayed due to the county's lack of wastewater capacity. But now that the sewer capacity has been made available, the project is moving in forward in accordance with the original conditions of the approval. And we believe the board does have the discretionary authority to determine that it is meets the adequate public facilities ordinance based on these nuanced conditions. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Bissell, I was looking through the actual zoning changes and what was written, and I think you misspoke. We didn't actually find that it wouldn't adversely affect other properties. There wasn't any mention of that I'm seeing in here. It wasn't a finding for the rezoning, I don't believe. Back to page 45 and 44. Unless I missed it buried in here somewhere. I just wonder where you pulled that from, because you said we approved that in, I guess, 17 or 18 when you came back in.
I was reading PB 1617 SB&K Investments Amendment Number 1. Let me go ahead and read Part B just to make sure. The use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the land in which it's located. Land to the north is single-family residential, but has a significant tree buffer to the site. Land to the east is the Currituck House Assisted Living Facility. Land to the west is commercial, and land to the south is residential.
Where are you seeing that? What page are you?
42.
This is packet page 42.
All right. Thank you. I just wasn't seeing it. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, I just want to caution the board that that was a legislative decision, if you remember, so none of the testimony was given under oath and would not be competent for you to take notice of that in this quasi-judicial proceeding.
So the development does create a new residential use type and an appropriate density for the area where county water and sewer are available, and does provide a moderate cost housing opportunity for county residents within this well-designed neighborhood, and therefore we believe it is consistent and in harmony with the area in which it's located and will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting properties. And we believe it will be in conformity with the land use plan for the same reasons that I've already mentioned.
Attachment A is a statement. It's not. Are we saying that's a part of the previous application or this application?
Attachment A is an attachment to this application for a use permit.
Okay, so that is not a statement that this board adopted then?
No.
Okay. I just want to be clear because.
It just references a statement.
Right, okay, because, if you look at what was stated and when this was done, and at the time Bobby Hannick was the chair, there was no mention of that. So I just want to be, because you kind of said that the board had previously stated these, and that we didn't actually make that finding in a legislative, that it's not stated in the actual order.
Well, the board made findings that it was consistent with the 2006 land use plan.
Right, that part is fine.
Consistent with
Right, and I'm just, it's the property values that.
And then it's in public.
Right, that requires an expert witness where you're very familiar with that, obviously, so.
I concede the point.
Can I ask the question? It's been stated that all we're going to do is put lines there. Just put lines to make it separate pieces of property. Does that not change how it's managed and everything? When you put lines, instead of it being one unit, it's going to be several different units, correct?
Well, no, it can be built as a condominium with 16 different owners without getting a use permit under the commercial zoning, just with a TRC approval, and he's on the verge of obtaining that approval and could obtain that approval and go to work next week. But it's just a better project with townhome, as a townhome rather than a condominium, where you have lines on the ground, where people are buying in addition to the space, they're actually buying the dirt under the unit. And it's a better project, the values hold up better long-term, and
But it takes
Mr. Miller stated the banks prefer that.
But it takes the management off of the unit itself.
Well, either way, there's going to be an association that will be responsible for management of the grounds.
So I assume that Shingle Landing LLC basically is going to be the HOA until such time that they reach density, and perhaps Mr. Miller could answer that. Just kind of explain to us how you, what's your vision for how that's going to work to address Commissioner Etheridge's concerns?
Yeah, Shingle Landing Villas currently owns the property. They're the property owner of those pieces. And let me address her question first, just so we're clear on that. When we do putting the lines on the map, basically, in a condo, you only own the building. You own none of the dirt below it. In a townhome, you own the building and you own the dirt directly below it and inside those walls. That's really the technical difference of the two. As far as who will own it, we will end up forming a homeowners association like we do in all those pieces. And we have those architectural standards, which the board basically put forth in what we're to construct to. And then those homeowners or property owners, if they own more than one, would be responsible to maintain to that standard. Now, if you own the home, you're responsible to maintain the home. The other grounds and all the other stuff that you're asking about, Commissioner White, is the HOA. So each one of those properties still would pay dues, whether it's a condo or whether it's a townhome, and then those dues would be used to cut the grass, mulch the flower beds, cut the bushes, you know.
What about exterior siding, roof, that kind of stuff? Is there a different
one way or another? And that's the problem with a condo is if you do it in the condo, we increase the dues and we collect that stuff. So if you have delinquency and those types of things, there may not be enough money around at some point to fix the siding or do those types of things. In the other element, you have the actual homeowners who are responsible for those elements, just like you are in any other home in Shingle Landing or in Moyock Landing or any other community in there. You're responsible for your home. You're responsible to fix the window if it breaks or otherwise.
But wouldn't it be better if, say, if I owned a condo and it was being managed, if my windows are breaking or something, wouldn't it be better to fix it if I'm in a townhouse? You wouldn't have any control over me. I know the HOA would.
You still do, and there are certain nuances with it, and maybe window is a misspeak, and maybe I shouldn't use that category, but basically you're still responsible in a condo for all your heating and cooling. You're still responsible for, if you have a plumbing issue, you're still responsible for all your flooring, your cabinetry, everything inside and those types of things. In the condo, you're not responsible for the siding and probably the roof. The roof and siding would be the only two things you're not responsible for.
I own a couple condos, Mirage condos, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Corolla.
Yeah.
And yes, the association took care of the paving, the grounds, the complete exterior of the building. Internally, it's your problem.
Right.
But, and I think, not to speak for you, but I think Commissioner Etheridge's concerns are that in a townhome situation, you no longer have that control. So if you got a slab that moves in next to you, they don't take care of the place, the shingles are blowing off the roof, they're now degrading the property values of the adjoining neighbor through that action, and there is no remedy to fix that because there is no common element to repair that.
Well, I disagree.
Real quick, so let's take condo/townhouse out of it, and let's just say it's a homeowners association in a normal neighborhood.
Right.
I've been in those. That's why I moved out of Virginia. That was one of the leading things
I
that
get it.
caused me to get saved and move to North Carolina. And that is when the homeowners association decided what you could and you couldn't do, they could actually enforce it legally.
Right.
They could come out and re-roof your house
Yes.
and turn around and bill you.
Yes.
And so I don't,
And put a lien on
Pay the
it.
bill.
and lien your property.
Well,
and,
yeah. I mean,
and
I've been
so,
through that process. Not me personally, but as a HOA member, board member.
So I don't know that. I mean, you either have a good homeowners association, condo owners association, whatever, or you don't, right? And I have not personally experienced where a homeowners association couldn't get things done that needed to be done. Junk car out of the front yard, dog that's barking to whatever. And so
And that's the piece. Now you have 17 people who can get upset, or 16 can get upset about the one individual who doesn't take care of their roof or they're siding those pieces, and they can take legal action and do those pieces. If you have a condo, you have one entity that's responsible for the outside, and that's the condo association and that board. And if that board decides that they don't want to do it, then they don't do it. And the shingles fly off and the siding falls off and everything else as well. It's just that simple. I mean, those are the problems down the line why condos turn into lower income housing, because that stuff doesn't get done and then they don't want to spend the money because it's a big slug. It's when you have the individuals and you hold them accountable through the homeowner association, it's much, much more effective.
I know I get calls occasionally from people, and we'll use Eagle Creek, for example. Well, the HOA says that I've...
Sure, it's easy to use Eagle Creek.
The HOA says I've done something I weren't supposed to. Can the county intervene? No. You belong to the HOA. They have their own form of government, and they tell you what to do.
In all the subdivisions that we do and we bring forward to y'all, that's one of the things you require us to do, is do an HOA. And those bylaws and those covenants that we put forth have more binding authority than the county does in that community. So, I mean, the HOA is really the strongest way to do it.
Explain to me again why you didn't do it that way 2 years ago.
Well, the reason...
You said the wastewater, but...
Well, I'll be glad to, but I was trying to be, brief about it. When we started to do this, we did come forward, and I'd have to ask somebody to pull the records. Do you remember the date, Mark, that we went forward to TRC when we actually had to go away? We were sent away from TRC because the sewer, we were under an SOC. Okay, I mean, Lori...
I don't know the date. I can speak to it a little bit. It was sometime after October of 2018, October, November, somewhere in that time frame, because we realized that the SOC wouldn't allow new permits in October of 2018. So that's somewhere in that 2-month period.
Had you received a letter of commitment for wastewater at the time?
No, we couldn't get it at that time because the system was not in compliance.
Okay.
And because of that, we couldn't go to TRC because our UDO says you can't go to TRC unless you have a wastewater commitment letter from the state. But we couldn't get a state commitment letter because the system wasn't in compliance. So we waited and waited and waited, and now we're finally in compliance. We got to do that. Now we came forward. Now we're talking about inadequate facilities on the schools. So it's like...
And that's for you, I
Why
guess.
didn't you come forward with the townhouses in the beginning?
I did in 2018.
You were just doing it as a condo, not as a townhouse.
No, we always had townhomes. If you read even...
There was a townhome, but how
it
you were
was
going to
set up-
sell, you're changing how the product a little
No,
bit.
sir.
Well, then why do you need a use permit?
Yeah.
The,
Why, you weren't subdividing the townhomes, you were keeping them as...
Well, we have different processes we have to follow. We have to get the zoning, then once we get the zoning, then we got to go get the special use permit. Just like we talked about at one of the last ones around.
yeah, so to clarify, to do a multifamily project, you have to have the zoning in place, conditional zoning, which is what
We had that.
Laurie was speaking to. So he got that done in 2017, and then came back and amended it in February 2018.
Because it's conditional and we had to go.
Yeah, so so then it's got to come through in order to subdivide for a use permit, which is a totally separate process. So you can't subdivide the land at the rezoning hearing, just like you can't change the zoning at the use permit hearing. So there are two. That's the reason that some of the times the case you're going to see next is a use permit that's something you did zoning on at the last meeting. So that's why you see these things come through sometimes one right after the other. So.
Well, and I think initially, though, you weren't going to subdivide the property. Is that correct?
No, we always had asked for townhomes. And if you look at the definition, even the UDO, it talks about what a townhome is and owning the land below it and lot lines on the walls. And that's what's written into our conditional zoning approval is townhomes, very specifically.
Got it. Right.
And that's what we've always wanted to do. It's just a matter of we couldn't go forward because we had the
couldn't.
sewer problem.
You literally
And then we
couldn't,
got the
right.
sewer issue and we come forward and now we got a school problem. So we're like,
And when you came forward, you didn't come forward with it being, and you saying he couldn't do it at that time?
that's right.
You typically, and I'll ask Laurie to jump in here a little bit, but typically you see the zoning, and then once the zoning's approved, then they'll put the money into getting a process done to subdivide the land. They don't run back to back typically.
Correct. When I was saying you had to get
You
the
don't get one, you don't get the other. Right.
right. You get the zoning in place. That establishes the use as multifamily, and the way our UDO is written, that has to be conditional MXR. You get the zoning in place, and that establishes the use and density often as well. And then you have to come back through with the use permit to actually put lines on the map. And let me clarify that the only reason Mr. Miller is having to come before you with a less than 20 lot subdivision is where we are with schools. If we were 85% or less in any capacity, this could all be done at the staff level. So, and once the conditional MXR was established, he was probably anticipating that being able to be done at the staff level and it moving a little bit quicker than than having to come back before you for a use permit. Our UDO says that if your schools are within 85% of capacity, even these smaller subdivisions have to come forward for a use permit.
Okay.
I have, I'm just going to ask the question because I'm looking at this. This board sits as a quasi-judicial, so we have to hear testimony from expert witnesses on these matters. And I'm just, who is representing the expert witness regarding the harmony with the adjacent lands and the budding lands? Who's representing the expert on that?
Nope. They didn't bring anybody with them to qualify.
Well, I mean, we're required, and that's why I'm asking the question, is that is a requirement of the 4 findings, and we have to hear expert testimony, and that's why I'm just asking the question.
There isn't one.
Well, that's why I just want I want some clarity on that, because we sit and we have to make a decision based on what we're supposed to be making our decisions on, and that just keeps glaring at me, and I'm trying to figure out who was representing as the expert witness on that item right there.
And Mr. Chairman, we have denied in the past because of that exact reason.
I understand, and that's why I'm pointing it out. If we're going to be consistent with all applications, we need to make sure we sit as this board and follow the procedures.
What is the specific question you're looking to answer, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead if you want to jump in.
I was just thinking, thinking out loud.
Well, I'm just thinking, it says with the value of the adjoining abutting properties, who is going to bring the testimony that the value is not going to be depreciated, it's not going to be harmed, and the adjacent property is not going to be affected value-wise based on this project.
Those are normally done. You usually have an attorney present to establish your expert witnesses for a special use permit, and that's we in the past we probably didn't adhere to that as much, but we've had a lot of legislative stuff come down through the legal system, and so we've taken a much more stringent look at that and following that, and basically it protects you and this board. So if we decided to approve this tonight without having those findings of fact, and a neighbor wanted to see you, they probably would win in court and make you come back to us and have to go through this whole process again. And that's what the county attorney was talking about when he made that opening statement.
So an attorney is qualified to speak to the valuation of adjoining
No,
properties?
they would establish an expert witness for you. You would bring an appraiser in basically to say your project's going to be good, it's in harmony with the surrounding area, and it will not injure the property.
I can't bring an appraiser. I have to bring an attorney who brings an appraiser.
Right.
Yeah, and
Or
then
establish you as an appraiser.
Well, somebody asked.
Well, first of all, under state law, it requires an expert who's qualified to give an opinion that the use will not injure the value of abutting lands. And typically, it would be a lawyer who would have the ability to elicit the appropriate testimony and qualify the witness as an expert. That's why it is important to have attorneys represent parties in use permit proceedings.
I know that's why I was bringing the question.
That being
for clarity.
said, I think it would be in your best interest if we tabled this and allowed you to get an expert witness in here, have an attorney come in and qualify them. I know it's a pain in the neck. I know it's going to take a little longer, but if you have anybody turn up against you and they bring an expert witness in, you're basically done at that point. So it is It's the courts getting in the way.
Well, it is. That's why I was bringing
Lawyers.
this up, just because we have to follow the procedures, and we need to have an expert witness presenting evidence on this.
So, I know you probably can't answer this, but do you think 2 weeks or a month would give you time to hire? Do you have an appraiser that you work with regularly?
I have several.
Okay, so you can probably get somebody to put something together for you and show up at our next meeting.
One was actually just calling me right now.
Well, it would have to be the next quasi-judicial meeting, which would be the
Well, we
second meeting.
we don't necessarily have to do that.
You
We
can
can-
continue.
Well, we
that.
could
We continue that
now.
because this is an open,
This is, okay.
and hear this at our next meeting, so we're not causing
Yep, okay.
Mr. Miller any
Yeah.
further delay than we have to.
Okay.
And the county's learned this lesson the hard way.
Yes.
By not having an expert witness.
So that would be the, so with that,
So,
I think with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to table this into our April 5th meeting to allow the applicant time to get an expert witness to come in.
and then with the public hearing portion of this would continue on.
The
Table
public
and
comment.
continue the
Yeah, the
public
pub-
hearing.
Public continue public
Yes,
hearing.
you're not closing the evidentiary phase, so
Right,
you're
it's-
still open to
Right now,
receive
everything's still
additional
open.
evidence.
It allows us to keep moving.
Can I ask one thing before I second your motion? Was the 5th ample time for you?
That's
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to table this to the next meeting and keep the.
We'll continue this to the next meeting, April
We have a
5th.
second. Any further discussion on this? That's board vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries. This will be moved to the next meeting, the 5th, I believe it is. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may we take a break?
Yes, let's take a 5-minute break for the next. Thank you. All right, I'd like to go ahead and reconvene our Board of Commissioners meeting. And the next item is PB 18-21, the Foss Track Plan Development Phases 1 through 5, request for an amended preliminary plat use permit number 2 for a planned development residential located off Currituck Highway, tax map 15, parcel 86, Moyock Township. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter, would you please stand and do your affirmation? All right, if you could raise your right hand, please. Do you affirm the evidence provided will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, thank you. Ms. LaCicero, I believe you have this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an amended preliminary plat, use permit for the Falls Track. And like we were speaking in the previous case, you all amended the zoning of this at the earlier meeting in March, and now they're coming forward with an amended preliminary plat to match that zoning amendment. The Falls Track is located between Ranchland and Eagle Creek. It is zoned PDR, Planned Development Residential. It is full service in the 2006 land use plan and limited service in the Moyock Small Area Plan. So, if you remember the first meeting in March, you had a rezoning for the new stub out of Leaf Street. That will be a connection between the Foss Plan Development and the Flora MXR development that's going to be adjacent to this. There's also going to be a minor shift in the side lots between lots 42 and 44, a minor shift. So, and once again, this project also has a little bit of history. The original approval was January 21st, 2020. That was the use permit. Once again, you have the rezoning, a legislative decision that establishes the use and density, and then they come back with a use permit for a preliminary plat in order to actually be able to subdivide the property. So this request is once again, the Leaf Street connection to Flora property and a minor shift of some lot lines between lots 42 and 44. Our UDO does state that, that a road, or any change in the roads, is a major, change that would come back and need board approval. So, the 2006 land use plan classifies this as full service within the Moyock Small Area Plan. The policy emphasis for Moyock's sub-area is properly managing growth. And central sewer is proposed, this area is proposed to be served by central sewer, and it does have the ability to go a higher range of density. So with the original approval, the BOC, the board found that the proposed plan is consistent with policy HN1 of the 2006 land use plan. The Currituck County shall encourage development to occur at densities appropriate for the location. And you also found with the approval that it is consistent with the Moyock Small Area Plan, policy FLU1, to promote compatibility between new development and existing development to avoid adverse impacts to the existing community. So, and if you're wondering, the TRC is recommending approval of this second amendment to the use permit with the following revisions: that the application complies with all applicable review standards, that the July 2019 stormwater improvements remained unchanged, and that is in your packet. And the amended preliminary plat is effective only upon written receipt consent by the property owners and the applicant. The applicant has demonstrated the proposed use will meet the use permit review standards of the UDO and the conditions of approval necessary to ensure compliance with the review standards of the UDO and prevent or minimize the adverse effects of development and application of the surrounding lands. So, and we did not speak of adequate public facilities because this original approval, first of all, this this development will go to the Shawboro. It is district to go to Shawboro Elementary School, which will be, it is at 94% actual capacity now, and is at 90, will be 97 with the change in classroom size. Plus, this was approved prior to, the original use permit was approved prior to the issue with Moyock Elementary School. So, with that, once again, this is a minor change. The rezoning was approved at the first March meeting. They're coming back for an amended preliminary plat use permit to have that change reflected on the use permit as they move forward in the subdivision process.
Any questions from the Board of Commissioners, from Mr. Cicero? Okay, if not, before we bring the applicant up, I'll ask again, does the applicant have any questions regarding what staff has presented up to this point? Okay, hearing none, thank you, Ms. LaCicero, and I'll ask the applicant to come forward then, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark Bissell, 3512 North Croatan Highway, Kitty Hawk.
Mr. Chairman, I must first state, as required by the North Carolina State Bar, as it appears there is a non-attorney representing the petitioner in this, or applicant in this matter, and give to the board the summary from the Authorized Practice Advisory Opinion 2006-1 from the North Carolina State Bar. Land use professionals, including architects, engineers, and land use planners, may appear and testify as to factual matters and any expert opinions that they are qualified to present at quasi-judicial proceedings, but the presentation of other evidence, including the examination and cross-examination of witnesses, making legal arguments, and the advocacy of results on behalf of others before quasi-judicial zoning and land use hearings, is a practice of law that may be performed only by a licensed attorney.
Does the applicant understand that? And just as a reminder, as we sit, we're going to be looking for expert witnesses on each matter to present.
I understand.
Okay.
Solicitor, do we have the slide available that was put up at the hearing here that shows what the change is and an overall plan of this that has in red the stub, the stub across the.
Is it on the shared drive?
Well, no, it's included in this one. Right
black screen right
To be
now.
honest, unless I can zoom in. I was trying to see if I could do it one more. That's all I got. So.
And I wanted to have this on the screen just to show the minor nature of the change to the use permit that this board has already issued, which involves making a fifth connection to the adjacent property. So basically stumping one more street 50 feet across the farm buffer to the Flora tract to line up with the proposed plan that you've all approved for the Flora farm. So that is really the extent of this request, along with just adjusting a couple of lot lines by a couple of feet to improve building envelopes. So all of the use criteria, we believe, still stand based on what you've determined in the past. That this use will not endanger the public health or safety because the transportation approvals are still in place. The public potable water condition is still in place. The wastewater condition that you ruled on is still in place. The stormwater management and all of the commitments are still in place. It's already been determined that the use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the area in which it's located. And that the use is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the land use plan, including policies AG6, HN1, HN3, WS7, WQ3, WQ4, TR9, PR4, PR6, TR12, CA1, TR11, and TR8, that it's consistent with the Moyoc Small Area Plan and policies TR2, IS1, IS4, IS5, SA, and R1. And the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities, including but not limited to schools, fire and rescue, law enforcement, and other county facilities, as the school capacity has already been allocated to this project.
Mr. Bissell, I'll go ahead and ask the question then. Are you representing the expert to addressing the value of the adjoining and abutting lands?
I'm not, but this board has already made that determination and then made it actually on at least 2 prior occasions that this is not injurious, and this minor change that we were making we don't think affects that one way or the other.
Mr. Chairman, I would say, except for the unauthorized practice of law issue, it would be my opinion that this board could take judicial notice of orders or previously issued by this board and the findings contained in those orders.
From the previous, you said the previous?
Yes, so long as there's a quasi-judicial proceeding
Yeah.
in which evidence was received under oath and presented by qualified experts for the given elements that the board is looking to.
Thank you for that
Mr.
explanation.
Chairman, did we not at last meeting amend without those expert witnesses in place?
How so?
False was on the last meeting.
Okay. Okay.
So I guess we just took what they presented. Previously, it had been approved, as Mr. McCree just said.
Okay.
Again, to the extent that that was relying upon previous quasi-judicial decisions, I think it would be appropriate to take judicial notice of those facts and findings contained in those previous quasi-judicial decisions.
Let's give it to the county manager.
And also, the last time when you voted on this before at the last meeting, it was a legislative matter. not quasi judicial, but I'm just kind of pointing out that there was a difference.
Was before you at the last meeting for the PDR amendment, which was the legislative, but what we're relying on today is the testimony that was put in the record that you all found consistent 2 or 3 months ago.
So nobody at the last meeting.
When the use permit was
The
amended.
last meeting was legislative.
So nobody at the last meeting presented evidence, though?
No.
No, but evidence was presented
Right.
on two prior occasions. You can rely
And I
on.
believe that our attorney was stating it was prior to that meeting, there was a quasi judicial hearing that we had evidence presented that addressed this, that we could still use. Correct?
And let me just go for the record. In fact, read a little bit out of a recent Court of Appeals case explaining this. And the Court of Appeals, just in December, in fact, elaborated on judicial notice and when it's appropriate to be taken. Judicial notice is appropriate where a fact is not subject to reasonable dispute in that it is capable of accurate and ready determination by resort to resources whose accuracy cannot reasonably be questioned. North Carolina courts have long held that important public documents will be judicially noticed, and that includes the court sites. Important public documents in this context have been held to include, among other things, a Utilities Commission order modifying a joint venture agreement, a vehicle insurance classification scheme composed by the North Carolina Rate Bureau, and contractual agreements between state government and private entities. And so I think this would be much like a Utilities Commission order modifying a joint venture agreement, which would have been based upon competent material and substantive evidence presented during the course of that proceeding.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bissell.
I'd be glad to answer any
No,
questions.
yeah, no, does the board have any other further questions right now? Yes, and anything, yes, or this or anything stated, yes.
I just wanted to ask, in here, there's a letter to whom it may concern about the sewer system. Do you know if the sewer problem's been fixed at Eagle Creek?
The last conversation I had with the state, they were satisfied with the progress that had been made and were comfortable with an application moving forward for additional connections to the system.
They're just comfortable. You don't know if the problem's been fixed up there or not.
Well, the substantial problems were with the collection system, and those have been, I think, substantially resolved. There are capital improvements that need to be made to make sure nothing happens again in the future. Those improvements will be made after the title transfers to the new utility, and that's in progress.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Bissell from this board? Okay, if not, thank you, Mr. Bissell, and I am going to go ahead and open up the public hearing portion. I have no one signed up. Did anyone show up late that wishes to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'm also going to close the evidentiary hearing portion of this is now closed. And now we'll get into the deliberation phase of the Board of Commissioners. Do we have any further comments? If not, I'll ask for a motion from this board.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to approve PB 18-23, Falls Phases 1 through 5, amended preliminary plat, preliminary plat use permit number 2, with staff recommendations because the applicant has demonstrated the proposed use meets the use permit review standards of the UDO. Use permit review standards worksheet. 1, the use will not endanger the public health or safety, applicant's findings. Transportation, potable water, wastewater, and stormwater management will be addressed in accordance with the following paragraphs. 1, transportation. The main subdivision entrance will be connected directly to NC 168. Deceleration and acceleration lanes will be provided in accordance with NC DOT standards and will be approved by NCDOT prior to construction. Connectivity will be provided to the existing farmland to the southeast, the auction site, and to the west. Roadways will be laid out generally as shown on the master plan and will be in accordance with the approved right-of-way and pavement width characteristics using NCDOT Complete Streets Planning Manual as a guide. Appropriate access has been made for emergency service vehicles in accordance with applicable standards, including the North Carolina Fire Code. 2. Potable water will be supplied by Currituck County via an existing 12-inch main located on Currituck Highway, which will be tapped and looped through the site. Fire protection will be provided in accordance with the UDO standards and applicable ISO standards. The water system will be modeled to demonstrate adequate flow and pressure for fighting fires while meeting the maximum day domestic demand. 3. Wastewater. Centralized wastewater treatment and disposal facility will be provided in accordance with the North Carolina standards and approved by NCDEQ and/or NCDHHS. A private utility, Currituck Water and Sewer, Inc., will provide wastewater disposal services via the wastewater treatment plant in Eagle Creek. 4. Stormwater management. A major drainage way known as Rolling Creek Canal runs through the development property. Due to the importance of this drainage feature, not only to the development, but to other properties located both upstream and downstream of this property, the developer has committed to clearing and laying back the slopes and stabilizing the portion of Rolling Creek that runs through the Eagle Creek, runs from the Eagle Creek subdivision to the railroad next to NC 168. The developer has also committed to improving the common property line ditch along ranch land and the auction property, and to excavate a new ditch that will be available to ranch land along the common property line from the auction site, pen number 002300000070000. That's a staff addition, to the south of the power easement. Subject to obtaining right-of-way of entry to other properties, the developer will also improve the sections of Rolling Creek downstream of the false property that require maintenance. On-site stormwater will be managed by constructing a series of stormwater management ponds that will be interconnected and will retain and slow-release stormwater to existing outlets. In addition to modeling and retaining stormwater to the UDO and stormwater manual standards of the difference between runoff from a 10-year developed condition and runoff from a 2-year wooded condition site, stormwater will be modeled for the 100-year storm without adversely impacting neighboring properties. Implementation of this plan shall improve drainage for neighboring properties compared to existing conditions. Stormwater will be conveyed to on-site retention ponds through a combination of curbs with inlet stormwater pipes and open vegetated swales. Number 2, the use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the area in which it is located. Land use to the west is agricultural, with one dwelling unit located approximately 435 feet from the nearest property line and approximately 565 feet from the nearest structure. Land use to the north across the railroad and Currituck Highway is commercial. Land to the east is farmland and residential lots, and land to the south is residential lots. Perimeter compatibility is being addressed as follows. To the west, a 50-foot farm buffer is being provided, followed by a 60-foot roadway corridor. So the nearest dwelling unit will be at least 565 feet from the existing residence on that farm. A vegetated buffer is also being provided along that property line. 2, to the north, Currituck Highway, a berm is being provided along the highway, along with lakes flanking the main entrance road. The nearest dwelling unit will be set back at least 200 feet from the highway right-of-way at the closest point. The visual impact of the development will be minimized by setbacks, berms, and landscaping. 3, to the east, a 50-foot vegetative farm buffer is being provided along the existing farmland. Traditional single-family dwelling unit lots are being proposed in the areas that back up to the existing dwelling units in the adjacent ranchland subdivision. Even though the dwelling types are believed to be compatible, a minimum 50-foot buffer is being provided between the developments. 4, to the south, compatible residential development is being proposed and a minimum 90-foot open space buffer is shown to the property line. 5, limited commercial development proposed to be located interior to the development and will front along the landscape entrance boulevard. 6, lot size ratios and density ratios are comparable to other developments that have been approved in the immediate area and in other parts of Moyock. The applicant is not aware of any adverse impacts on land values in the surrounding area. The applicant anticipates that its proposed stormwater improvements may benefit the property values of the nearby ranchland community. The development is anticipated to increase the values of nearby properties by improving existing drainage problems. The site is adjacent to non-agricultural activities, including the ranchland neighborhood to the south and southeast, and commercial and residential uses to the east. The site is also in close proximity to the Eagle Creek neighborhood. The proposed use is compatible with these adjacent uses and furthers the county's goal of concentrating new residential development in the vicinity of existing residential development. Nearby communities include existing planned communities of 588 lots to the west, a 275 lot subdivision to the east, and 426 lots under development to the north of Currituck Highway, all in the vicinity of the Falls Tract. The development is appropriate for the location as it continues existing development patterns in this part of Moyock. Lot area ratios and density ratios are consistent with other developments that have been approved recently nearby in other parts of Moyock. 3, the use will be in conformity with the land use plan or other officially adopted plans. At its May 6, 2019 meeting, the Board of Commissioners determined the development was compatible with the land use plan, the Moyock Small Area Plan, and the surrounding neighborhoods because, 1, the proposed conditions for the property will improve drainage problems on the property, and with nearby ranchland subdivisions, if improvements can be made to drainage system on all site properties, and 2, the PDR is compatible with the existing Moyock Township subdivisions. 4, the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. That's staff findings. 1, on December 11, 2019, the Board of Education revised its statement about the school district and determined that this development is entirely within the Shawboro School District. The superintendent also advised that Shawboro Elementary School has capacity for the 119 elementary students this development is projected to generate, with phases 1 through 5 expected to generate 75 of those students based on the July 9, 2004 Tischler study student generation rates. 2, the county can provide adequate facilities including but not limited to fire, emergency services, and law enforcement to serve this development. And also I'd like to include the county attorney's statement that we can use the prior findings of the special use permit to this condition also. or this application also.
I just said that you're taking judicial notice of the prior
Judicial
findings
notice.
in previous orders.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second that. Do we have any further discussions in the matter? Okay, ask for a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-1. Thank you. Okay, the next item is board appointments. And I believe Vice Chairman Beaumont has an appointment for the Fire Advisory Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do, and let me first start off by saying somehow I did not see Ed's paperwork and get that out to y'all prior to, I'm sorry?
I said it.
Thank God there's
Yeah, she
someone
sent it.
responsible.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And this is why she's indispensable.
But I liked your backing up.
When,
So.
anyway, I couldn't find it.
With the agenda, I said it.
Got it. Okay, and then,
You're
Good.
covered.
So
thank God.
carry on, sir.
So with that said, and since Ed lives in Bob White's district, I'll have Ed, or Bob go ahead and
I'm not even.
try to pronounce his last name because Lord knows.
Now I got to go find that.
Oh God. Yes. So with that said,
Oh, here we go. All right.
Page
I want to
101.
offend.
Oh, it's in the, oh, sorry. I had my email open. I just saw it pop up in there. So.
Okay. no.
So, Ed, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. Ed Yamielowski,
All right, that's about what I was going to go with.
Okay.
something like that.
I'll second
Yes.
that.
Okay, well, this is consensus. So, if any other questions? If not, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. The next item is our consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Okay, a motion second. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. And I guess now it would be appropriate to adjourn, ask for a motion to adjourn our regular board meeting.
So move.
Motion and second, Commissioner Jarvis.
Adjourn this because you're gonna move into what is labeled a work session. But if you were to adjourn your regular meeting, it then would be a special meeting which has not been properly advertised.
Never mind.
Okay, well, never mind. Okay, never mind then. Let me retract my, can withdraw the the motion in the second then, and I will apologize for that error. I'll recess from our regular board meeting and reconvene into the work session. With that being said, let's take a 5-minute break before we get into our work session.